Hello again. Now we will be discussing nature and well-being. We know how body, mind and brain have their well-being, where it happens, how it happens. Now we would like to explore the factors in nature, the elements in nature which can easily cause this well-being, and thus we can use nature as an easy access for improving our mental well-being. Let me start with a fascinating story. It is said that in 1272, when Marco Polo was traveling through different parts of Western Asia, he noted that people of Kerman were polite, humble, and well behaved, while people in Persia, which was in the neighborhood, were cruel, unkind, and threatful. When exploring the reason of this stark behavioral difference, the people said that it was the soil that was responsible for it. And the story goes that the king ordered the soil from Isfahan in Persia and kept it in his banquet hall. His men started to shower each other with curse words and assaulted their foes. It took us 700 years to develop a science out of this. It's called environmental psychology. With the efforts of Brushansky in 1970, we developed this branch, which studied relationships and interactions between person and place. Environmental psychology is rooted in the belief that nature has a significant role in human development and conduct. It affects how we feel, think, and behave with others. The Croods. We all have enjoyed this movie irrespective of our age. Why? Did we emote through it, or did we relive our lives? Biophilia. Biophilia Hypothesis and Theory. 1973, German psychoanalyst Erich Fromm put forth this biophilia hypothesis, stating that humans have love for everything that is alive. Actually, this was a concept developed from biophobia, where we have instinctual fear and response for our survival, especially from our predators and snakes. Edward Wilson biophilia theory states that our ancestors evolved in wild settings and relied on environment for survival. So we have an innate drive to connect with nature. He proposed that the tendency of humans to focus on and to affiliate with nature and other life forms has a genetic basis. The next theory is open windows of nature to de-stress, also called as stress reduction theory, SRT. Roger Ulrich in 1980 performed a very interesting experiment in a hospital. He compared the recovery of 23 matched pairs of surgical patients. Half of them had a room with a window looking out over trees, and the other half with a window looking onto a brick wall. And the results were amazing. We observed changes of 12% less cortisol, which is the stress hormone, 7% less sympathetic activity, that is the stress nervous system, 1.4% less blood pressure, 6% less heart rate, and surprisingly 40% more natural killer cells, which provide us with immunity. Stress reduction hypothesis posits that spending time in nature triggers a physiological response that lowers the cortisol and the stress levels. Exposure to natural environments facilitates positively toned emotional reactions and hence has a restorative effect. This theory is further validated by evidence from Balking and Falk in 2010. They considered that our neurons were nature primed. Our affinity with nature comes from our evolution in savanna-style environments of open grassy landscapes with small scattered trees, especially similar to East Africa, where human species actually evolved. And why do we prefer this landscape? This was further explained in the Prospect Refuge theory in 1996 by Appleton. Open landscapes is a prospect for living because it gives an unimpeded view of the predator, and refuge from these small trees because of sun, natural hazards, or again predators. So it's called a prospect refuge theory. He also proposed that our attraction to sound of running water has been similarly attributed to evolutionary advantage of nearby clean water source. These stress reduction mechanisms led to further development of newer stress reduction methods like forest bathing, also called Shinrin Yoku. Shinrin Yoku, or forest bathing, developed in 1982. This term was coined by Japanese government based on ancient Buddhist and Shinto practices. It was further studied and scientifically validated by Miyazaki's forest bathing experiments, who is a vice director of environmental health at Chiba University, Tokyo. Dr. Keeling, an associate professor at Nippon Medical School in Tokyo, also a leading health benefit doctor for about natural environments, agrees that we are hardwired to affiliate with natural world, and just as our health improves when we are in it, so our health suffers when we are disconnected from it. So, besides our going to parks, swimming pools, planting house plants, putting up perfumes, essences, our morning walks, and our natural stress reduction methods, there are more stress reduction techniques available. Forest bathing, Phyton Sites, aromatherapy, physical exercise. Forest bathing we talked about, but Phyton Sites is something very interesting coming out from Dr. Keeling's research. He says that plants, tall trees, green trees, emit Phyton Sites in the air or atmosphere. These are actually to protect themselves from predators. Inhaling these Phyton Sites gives us good immunity and a feeling of well-being by decreasing stress hormones. There are hundreds of Phyton Sites available in the world, and most of them are used as essential oils in aromatherapy. Physical exercise as stress reduction technique, again, it goes to evolutionary times when we used to stay in the wilderness. The only stress we have ever encountered is being chased by a tiger or a lion. We had no idea of any other stress, like tomorrow I have a submission, or I have a presentation, or my boss has asked me this or deadline, or how my loan installments are going to go. So our neurons are again primed to the stress of a predator, of being eaten up, and hence every stressful act, scene, or experience causes us to respond as if we are chased by a tiger. It leads to increase in cortisol and adrenaline, the two stress hormones, which in turn cause a lot of physiological changes in the body, like increased heart rate, increased blood pressure, increased blood supply to the muscles, and a lot of sweating and increased respiratory rate. All this is actually a preparation to fight or flight, and hence it's called a fight or flight response. Coming back to current times, because our stresses are different, we don't run away, or we rather cannot run away from them, and this change happened inside the body because of cortisol and adrenaline. This preparation for the fight or preparation for the flight is not utilized, and hence we feel fright, or we feel the symptoms of anxiety like heartbeat palpitations, or difficulty in breathing, or tremulousness, shaking hands as a resultant of increased blood supply to the muscles. So physical exercise is a way of actually letting it out, letting or utilizing the change caused by cortisol and adrenaline, and then making us feel relaxed as if we have dodged the predator and now in safely in our caves. So that's how physical exercise helps in stress reduction. There are supportive researchers for this: David Hayward, Dr. Miles Richardson, Miyazaki's experiments, Minku's experiments around water bodies, Robert Greenway, and Mary Watkins' ecotherapies. The second postulate about how nature causes well-being is put forth by Kaplan in 1989, and it's called attention restoration theory. Kaplan's theory proposes a more cognitive explanation for nature's restorative characteristics and properties. Japanese always looked for stress relief from nature, while Americans looked for better performance. So, according to Kaplan, there are two types of attentions: direct attention or voluntary attention when we are given a task. And there is involuntary attention or reflexive attention, also called soft fascination, which does not require any effort. One at a time is engaged. So, when we are at a task, we are using our voluntary attention, and when we are not doing anything, we are shifting our attention to involuntary attention or soft fascination. After prolonged use of direct attention of tasks, we have attention fatigue and then reduced ability to perform cognitive tasks and increased mental fatigue. According to Kaplan, involuntary attention is effortless, and hence utilizing it to restore direct attention is helpful. How do we get this? Reflexive attention? Simply daydreaming or looking at nature. Nature entices attention but doesn't engage it, doesn't demand it. Attention given in the nature during walks or sitting by the riverside shifts your attention to a reflexive attention and rests the active attention or the voluntary attention and restores it. Thus, it is a rest to the prefrontal cortex, the executive functions. As the nature gives fewer cues to analyze or fewer choices to inhibit or prioritize, less fuel is used, and hence we have cognitive improvement with restoration and more fuel availability. There is less impulsivity and better decision making because of improved cognition. The mechanisms used by attention restoration therapy is change of course from the routine, soft fascination, that is this different type of attention which doesn't tire us, the expanse of the nature which doesn't engage our attention and does not fatigue it. Also, there is a very unique mechanism in the nature. Nature follows the speed of our brain. Our brain actually has a speed of 120 bits a second. When we walk, we actually follow that speed. But this technology and the information overload is kind of overwhelming for the brain's speed. So nature makes it compatible. Nature is in sync with our brain processing speed, and hence we have less effort and more harmony when we are in nature. There are supportive researchers by Gregory Brackman, Cynthia Frenza, Matthew White. Actually, Matthew White used virtual reality and nature to improve attention in gaming and task performance. Then Ackley and Strayer improved problem solving and creativity, writers or poets in nature. He has done more studies about it. Then we have the awe theory. The word awe comes from the feeling like feeling small in front of a divine. When you see something that awes in nature, you feel a pull in the occipital lobe, which gets activated by the vast expanse of the sensory extravaganza you see. Maybe this redirects the blood flow to the occipital brain and rests the frontal lobe and the executive function and restores it. The awe theory was put forth by Irish philosopher Edmund Burke in 1757. He wrote, "The passion caused by great and sublime in nature, when those causes operate the most powerful, is astonishment, as it is the state of the soul, in which all its motions are suspended. Vastness of extent and degree of difficulty to sense it, the mystery in it, leads to the phenomenon of awe." Awe theory says that awe experiences are self-transcendent. They shift our attention away from ourselves, make us feel a part of something greater than ourselves, and make us more generous towards others. It is the perceived vastness and a need of accommodation together. When a stimulus exceeds our expectation in some way, it can provoke an attempt to change the mental structure that we use to understand the world. So there is a cognitive realignment, which is an essential part of awe experience according to Keltner and Hay. In their paper, they studied and have shown that awe is often accompanied by feelings of self-diminishment and increased connectedness with other people, ego dissolution as we call it. How does awe act? It is same to flow state, a flow experience. Physiological, psychological and social effects are seen with awe, like we have decreased heart rate, but we can see goosebumps. It has seen that there is decrease in the markers of chronic inflammation. There are psychological effects also, like ego dissolution, increased connectedness, increase in critical thinking, and increase in positive mood and decreased materialism. Then we have the sensory calibration theory. Very interesting, put forth by David Strayer. It says that exposure to nature recalibrates our senses, which are generally desensitized by urban living. So getting the feet dirty keeps your heart healthy, or barefoot walking, or the nature's Phyton Sites. Even soil bacteria or soil compounds called actinomycetes, which gives this aroma of the soil, or the fractal patterns on the leaves, on the stones which we touch, all recalibrate our sensory system, and that restores our functioning back to the original what we are made of. The sensory extravaganza is actually letting nature in your body through all 5 senses together. So in real, it is absolutely great, but we have been using it as an imagery tool for stress relaxation therapies in clinics. We try to tell the patients to imagine them in such a location, and actually if they imagine, suppose, a beach side, then I would tell them to see the water with closed eyes, see the waves, feel the breeze, then feel the soil or the sand texture, smell that aroma of the sea. So we try to engage all 5 senses. That helps recalibration of senses and relaxation. Frederick Law Olmsted says that nature employs the mind and senses without fatigue and yet exercises them and enlivens them. This is a refreshing reset. Now we come to one of the most important theories called default network theories. 3 main networks of the brain: executive network, prefrontal cortex for executive functions, behavioral inhibition; spatial network, orientation and coordination; and default network, active when executive network rests. Only one is possible to engage at a time. So, if you look at this, you have nothing to do. You have to just look. So, your body and the brain changes to default network. Nothing to do. Okay? So, it is a free-ranging network. While daydreaming and mind-wandering, it gets activated. It is responsible for empathy, creativity, height of insights. It gives our humane experiences, our deep aesthetic sense and deep thoughts. It helps executive functions to rest for a while and restore. It is more sensory, appreciating, observing, feeling, and less analytical. It is felt by our old ancient brain, so it is slower, so activates while walking, leisurely in the meadows, syncing both the speeds as we discussed before. More close to nature evolutionally, because the brain is a primordial brain, a previous brain. Hence nature acts on it very easily, very accessible to nature, quickly accessed by nature. We have supported researchers for this theory as well by Kaplan. And again, they say that it is same as flow states described by artists, singers, athletes. Theories of soft fascination reported by Ashley. And again, he mentions that nature gives fewer choices to focus attention and process information. So there is less filtering, less inhibitory mechanisms needed, saving fuel and resources for deeper experiences and deeper thoughts. Daniel Levitin says the brain's processing speed, as I mentioned before, is 120 bits per second. When we talk to a person, it takes 60 bits per second. So urban daily living exhausts us, exhausts our brain and attention. Just watching a river flow or butterfly fly is easier and refreshing for the brain, less taxing for the brain. Henry James again described these 2 types of attentions. Brain overwhelmed by stimuli need to filter out the traffic. So most neurons perform this inhibitory function and tire themselves, fatigue themselves. Such theories and more we have found again in mindfulness. Mindfulness says that we stay in our default network even while working with our tasks, one at a time. No serial tasking, no multitasking, just one task. and be the observer of it. Then there is a concept of timelessness, as I discussed initially, that time kills. Yes, all other animals do not have a sense of time. They are, by default, mindful of being here and now. They will not save for the future, not worry for the future, not remorse about the past, not cry about losing things. They are here and now, and hence they live in a timeless world, which that's why keeps them in mental well-being. Then we have theories of hypnosis and subconscious mind, where they say the subconscious mind is 6,000 times more powerful than the conscious mind. And as soon as we go to the subconscious mind, similar to the default network, it is much more powerful, much more creative and intuitive. Meditation, yes, meditation also is a subconscious mind state, again put forth. Trance state is similar. We can be in this trance state, we get tranced, we get engaged, hypnotized, and we go into this default network. There are more theories like the negative ions theory. When you have water bodies and air interacting with each other, negative ions are created which reduce depression. Then we have nature connectedness theory by John Zelensky, where our brains primed to connect to nature, so we seek for views, we seek for sounds of nature automatically. Then there's Law's nature deficit disorder, that we are so primed and so used to that we will crave for it, and that is why the deficit causes stress. So, summarizing all three presentations which I tried to do, what can nature do? Nature can reduce depression, anxiety, stress, mental fatigue, anger, aggression, pain, improve mood, sleep, confidence, cognitive function, creativity, immune function, longevity, energy. Longevity, we have seen Indian sadhus living in Himalayas for 300-400 years. Nature, healthy food, physical exercise. So what can nature do more? It can reduce symptoms of ADHD, trauma, psychosis, addiction. It can improve quality of life by decreasing Alzheimer's, dementias, cognitive declines. It can improve relationships, increase sense of gratitude, generosity, increase patience, life satisfaction, can motivate. What elements of nature do all this? We have seen fragrances, Phyton Sites, fractals, actinomycetes, Mycobacterium vaccae. This is one of the bacteria which has been tried by injecting and gives protection from viral diseases and illnesses by various studies. Then we have negative ions theory. Then we have environmental biodiversity. The more diverse the environment, less the focused attention needed. So that decreases the attention effort. So it's attention restoration again. Natural sights, natural sounds, pure fresh air, vastness, awe. All these elements of nature engage our attention in a default network and let our active brain rest for some time. How does the nature affect us? The physiological changes, we have seen documented evidence of increased DHEA, dihydroepiandrosterone, which is cardioprotective, anti-obesity, anti-diabetic, increase adiponectin, which protects against atherosclerosis, increase in immune function, reduce in inflammatory cytokines, and increase in natural killer cells by 40%, normalizing blood glucose level, hence decreasing the risk of blindness, nerve damage, kidney failure, the complications of diabetes, decreasing BP, heart rate, cortisol levels, increasing alpha activity in the brain. So all this has been increased by exposure to nature. And saying in another way, we are today suffering from all these illnesses because of the deficit of nature, or the less exposure of nature, or no inclusion of nature in our day-to-day lives. What are the psychological and cognitive changes that have been observed? Stress reduction. We all are stressed. So as the sympathetic fight-flight response increases with our urban living, day-to-day stresses, nature increases the parasympathetic, the opposite mechanism, which is the rest and digest system. Imagine I was chased by a tiger and then I run. I utilize that stress hormone changes in my body, and finally I reach my cave, and then I have a sip of cold water and relax. That is when the parasympathetic activity is engaged. So cold water, food engages parasympathetic activity and decreases the stress and inflammatory pathways. Again, nature improves sleep. The awe also is known to cause lower inflammatory cytokines. We have enhanced cognitive ability, better thinking, better problem solving skills, more patience, and improved impulsivity and improved decision making. Attention restoration and refreshed minds. So, nature is necessary for well being, that is for sure. We've tried to find so many research studies and evidences that nature does help and is necessary for well being. So, what is to be done then? So, we have to live holistically. You have to be a part of nature because the answers are hidden in nature. Whatever the sufferings are, if you ask, you can find the answers in nature. The nature guides you what to do. Flow states if you flow with the river, heightened awareness if you walk up the mountains, humility if you watch the sky, give and share like the trees, and patience and endurance if you walk meadows. Oneness, no boundaries to experience the awe of life. Getting a little philosophical, coming back to what can be done practically. How? So, do we need wellness getaways, wellness centers, wellness resorts? What should we have to tap this healing power of nature for our well-being? This is really underutilized. Recently, Uttarakhand government in India invested in forest creation for forest bathing for all, each and every, not just the rich and the elite. Current wellness industry may be more for the rich and elite and not true to its promises. In fact, it is not open-minded itself to inculcate as many real-life solutions available in nature. So what do? We try to follow Tim Bentley's nature pyramid, or if I may say, nature mountain. You start with the base, daily interaction with nature. You have house plants, you take walks, morning walks in nature. You sit by the garden side and just inhale fresh air. This is daily interaction with nature to de-stress. Then you should have weekly outings to the parks, waterways, the Finnish style. Finnish people do this. Then you can do the monthly excursions to forests, the Japanese style. They go once a month for forest bathing. Or you can have yearly bursts of wilderness. I try to do all of them because that is how I can handle not just my stress but others' stress. So I do all of them. I was so excited with reading all this and my thoughts were dancing and eager to express. Hope your thoughts are as excited as mine. Thank you.